Thank you, Kojin and Jisei, and good morning to you. It's afternoon here. Um, it's good to see you all, and through the magic of this technological wizardry, be able to speak with you. But I want to caution you that I was assured that the Wi-Fi in this apartment was working perfectly. However, it is apparently not working perfectly, which is something I can't control. And it's good to know that everyone has a very different idea of what perfection might be. It's good to be reminded of that because it has a lot to do with what's going on in the world, doesn't it? Everybody's got their own idea of, masks and vaccines and fossil fuels and white supremacy. Lots of different ideas about perfection. And I might go back to that, but what I was going to talk about today, I haven't spoken for a while, and I never really got to talk about the study text for the summer. So I thought I would drag us back to August and try to talk a little bit about the study texts. And I'm going to focus very narrowly on something that was on the cover of one of our study texts. It was a book I'd not read before, and I do recommend it to you. It's called Instructions to the Cook, excuse me, A Zen Master's Lessons in Living a Life That Matters. It's by our grandfather, Bernie Tetsugen Glassman, or layman Bernie Glassman, as we call him. And I really do recommend you read it in conjunction with the underlying text, the source text, which is Dogen's Tenzo Kyokun, preferably in the Thomas Wright translation with the Kosho Uchiyama's commentary, a really excellent book. They work together very well. But this subtitle on Bernie's book, A Zen Master's Lessons in Living a Life That Matters, really stuck in my craw. So I wanted to talk about that because I think it's very, very easy to misinterpret what that sentence means. I don't know what it meant to Bernie or maybe just to the book designer, but it's very unsettling to think that there is a life that matters and a life that does not matter. I mean, there must be a life that doesn't matter if there is a life that does matter, right? You can't have the one you like, the one you approve of, the one that's socially acceptable in whatever milieu you happen to be a part of, without the one you don't like. So I think it's really important to focus on this phrase. Um, and we can start by asking ourselves, well, what is our life? If we're going to live a life that matters, what is that? And I think if you just roll that around in your mouth for a little bit, it's not going to dissolve like a candy that delivers the taste you want or the magic formula you're seeking. It's impossible to answer in words at least, but there it is on the cover, living a life that matters. So what is that life? What is the life that we are all creating right now? The one life that we are all creating and part of right now, what is that? And you can get a direct expression of it right here, all these boxes, each of us in our own frames, in all sorts of places. And yet we're all on one big screen too. So this life is here right now. We don't know what it is, but it is undeniably here right now, and we are making it right now. And it is making us right now. And we don't know what it is, and yet it's the most intimate thing that we can imagine. And that is rather unsettling, isn't it? That we are never separate from our life. This life that was given to us to build together, we're never separate from it, and yet we have no idea what it is. That is, I mean, for me, I don't know how it is for you. That's really unsettling in a way. And not only is it um, impossible to define, it's also extremely brief. Extremely brief. And this is, of course, one of the core teachings of our sect, impermanence. So we've got a life that we're leading together, and no one here is going to leave this life at exactly the same moment in exactly the same way as the other people in this life. Every one of us will leave this life in our own time and in our own way, and we've got no idea where that is, or when that is, or how it will be. And that too can be mighty unsettling. And actually, if you think about how little time we have, you might get even more agitated about living a life that matters, because you don't have a lot of time to live a life that matters. So you better fucking hurry up and get that mattering going before it's too late. Get it going. Matter now. So I want to try to illustrate this a little bit with a couple of lives that I've observed very much at a remove in my current location, which is Paris. Um, I was in a place called the Place des Vosges, which is this amazing old square, and it's surrounded by these extraordinary buildings. But in the middle, it's really quite an ordinary place. It's just a few uh, patches of grass and lots of sandy, gravelly stuff that you can walk on, and benches and fountains. And there is one place, though, that there is actually a sandbox. So in this amazing architectural treasure, there's a sandbox. And of course, people bring their kids to the Place des Vosges so they can play in the sandbox. And one day I was walking there, and I noticed this kid, and he had a bucket in his hand, and he kept filling the bucket with water in the fountain, and then carrying the bucket over to the sandbox and dumping the water in the sand. And he kept doing this. I watched this for a little while, and it was repeated a number of times. And on his face was this expression of the utmost seriousness. This was a task of great importance to him. And of course, I didn't ask him, why are you doing that? What's the point? Don't you know you've got to live a life that matters? Do you think that carrying buckets of water and dumping them in sand is going to get you the Nobel Prize? I didn't ask him that. I just noticed his incredible absorption. There was nothing more important than getting that water into that sand. So that's one example of people I've observed here. And then I've got a very different example. On the Rue Saint Antoine, which is the street I live, very near the Bastille, there's a man who's been living on the street, I'm told, for about 15 years. And he is a stone cold alcoholic. A lot of people who use substances try to conceal that a little bit, or put it under a wrapper, or just do something to camouflage the dependency. But he is all out and all in to the alcohol. And he's been that way for 15 years or longer. And he's really in an absolutely appalling state. Half the time, I don't think he has the slightest idea what's going on around him. And I guess what happens is that he can manage to bag up enough money to go get some more cheap alcohol, and people give it to him, knowing absolutely what he'll do with it. But he is completely unapologetic, completely from the outside, unashamed, and totally, totally committed to what he is doing. Totally. So I ask you, what is the difference between the kid with the water and the adult with the alcohol? What's the difference? The adult with the alcohol was surely a kid at one point, maybe doing exactly what the kid I observed was doing. As a dress rehearsal, he carried water so that later he could carry alcohol. And the kid that's carrying water, well, let's hope it doesn't happen to him, but alcoholism happens to people who were kids, and he could become an alcoholic in his turn. We have no idea. But leaving those details aside, what is actually the difference between these two individuals? And please tell me which lives a life that matters. Is it possible that the alcoholic is not living a life that matters and that the child is? Or vice versa, if you prefer it that way? And it is exactly these kinds of comparisons that are, at least for me, so intensely painful. And I think if we think about how many people torment themselves about whether their lives are good or bad, whether they're worthy or not worthy, whether they're accomplishing something or not, whether anyone gives a shit, how many people are on that wavelength day after day, almost like a background routine in a computer, constantly interrogating themselves and all of their surroundings and all of their encounters. Is this working out for me? Am I worth it? Obviously, the guy on Rue Saint Antoine has decided that's how he's going to express it. And it's a painful expression to watch. But there are a lot of other expressions that aren't very far behind that, that don't have to be so public. And in a way, he's doing us a tremendous service by showing us the intense pain that this mania for self-validation is causing people everywhere. I know that it's caused me intense pain. Even now, as I speak to you, I'm worried about whether you like it or not. Is it any good or not? Are you getting what you want? Do you respect me? Do you care? Are you thinking about your lunch? I mean, this is going on. And I urge you to all think about whether it's going on for you. Because it's really important that it go on for you in a way that's at least conscious, so that you can see the corrosive effects of this lack of self-esteem that we all, at some level, I believe, carry, this incredible insecurity. And I think that this insecurity, this lack of self-esteem on some level, is what brings most, if not all of us, to practice. Isn't it that we feel we lack something that brings us to this practice, at least originally, that there's something wrong, there's something missing, there's something not quite right? I know that was true for me. And I don't know that it's fixed that little problem that I imagined I would have fixed. The problem went away because it stopped being a problem, not because the facts of my life have changed so dramatically. My perspective on the so-called problem is what has been changed by this practice. Where did we get this idea that we should be satisfied with ourselves, that we should be satisfied with our lives? Where did that come to us that we have this requirement? I'm not sure where it came from for me, but it's hard to get rid of, let me tell you. And it's no easier in Paris than it is in New York. So don't come here trying to get rid of it. So I want to turn to a quote that I read the other day that I thought had something to do with this. It's a quote from a person you might have heard of, Martha Graham, the great choreographer and dancer. And she wrote, "There is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And as there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, not how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel up, excuse me, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open." Kind of an amazing expression of expression, and a really important reminder, to me at least. And so, how do we keep the channel open? And this is becoming a little bit clearer for me because I have very specific ideas about how everything ought to go. And I'm very devoted to those ideas. But I'm finding that if I just listen to the circumstances and look at them as clearly as possible, that the next step almost takes itself. So instead of trying to conform reality to my preferences and ideas, allowing the flow of reality as it presents itself to take me along, not in a headlong manner, but to nonetheless kind of gently guide me. Because there's something useful about the current of reality. It's actually providing energy. If you think about a river, and we talk in this practice about crossing over, well, we're in a river. Let's leave crossing over aside. And it's capable of carrying us somewhere if we let it, if we listen to it and steer ourselves rather than paddling frantically against it, clinging to the bank while it drags us somewhere. Why not let the energy of reality impart some energy to us and some direction to our lives? I'm finding this to be a really, for lack of a better word, efficient way of making decisions, and efficient in terms of my own personal energy balance. So I recommend it as one possible way to keep the channel open. The point being that opposing reality does not keep the channel open. It's a very interesting thing. We have the ability to affect reality But when we try to make it conform to our preferences and wishes, that's where it gets pretty sticky, pretty uncomfortable, pretty energy intensive, pretty unpleasant. So I really am starting to see the value of accommodating circumstances and trying to influence them as best I can without outright opposition. And I do think this is rather congruent with our zazen. What brought us here today is zazen, right? Our zazen is a laboratory for learning to notice what's happening, to recognize that something is happening, and to allow ourselves to let go of the story of what is happening and simply reside in ourselves without referencing the story about what's happening. Or more often, perhaps for some of us, what happened or what will happen. We've got stories about all time and all space. Can we drop the story and just be in the flow of where we are as we are right now? It's essential to develop that skill so that we can stop tormenting ourselves off the cushion. I don't know about you, but I've certainly spent many hours tormenting myself on the cushion and many hours tormenting myself off the cushion. But eventually we get pretty tired of that. We get really aware of it and we get pretty tired of it. And suddenly the idea occurs to us that maybe we don't have to do it. And it takes a lot of hammering at the head with somebody like me to get that into the head. It's just like, but eventually it happens. I'd like to quote Dogen in the Tenzo Kyokun. He says, allow all things to come into and reside within your mind. Allow your mind and all things to function together. We can function together. It is hard to believe with all the craziness in the world that we can actually function together. But the only way to function together is to start by functioning together here. If everyone directed their energy to functioning here instead of attacking there, we'd have a much more peaceful world, I think. It's certainly worth a try, isn't it? I could quote all sorts of statistics. I have numbers about COVID deaths. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave that out of it completely. So let's see. Maybe I've got another quote that would be useful. Yeah. So the way I'm talking about zazen makes it sound like there's a reason to do it. That this is the formula that you can apply to fix your life, to get better. And I want to go back to the insistence on every life matters and that this is not a self-improvement project. It's very easy to make that mistake, and I've made that mistake many times myself. And I'm going to read something from Kodo Sawaki, who was an amazing practitioner, and maybe this will get the point over more eloquently than I can. You have to forget any results of your effort. Result-oriented practice is merely an enterprise a business. I always say zazen is an activity that comes to nothing. There is nothing more admirable than this activity that comes to nothing. To do something with a goal is really worthless. So, like the kid with the bucket, there's really no explaining it. But he was absolutely committed and totally sincere and completely absorbed in his task. So too the wino, if you'll forgive me for using that turn of phrase, completely committed, totally absorbed, and unapologetic and totally upfront about his alcoholism. Now, I'm not endorsing alcoholism. I myself don't drink. But can you see the common thread? Whatever you choose, you must do it absolutely with every bit of what you are. Completely absorbed, completely sincere, completely connected. And then you automatically have a life that matters. And because it doesn't matter to you that your life matters. You don't have time to think about it. This leads to a word that I don't hear used much in our talks. And that word is not that it isn't present in the talks, but I don't hear the word used. And the word is sincerity, which I define as total attention, total commitment, total devotion, if you will, to what you have going on right now. If you're totally devoted to what you have going on, how can you not be sincere? And if you're totally committed to what you have going on right now, how can you not be totally intimate with what you have going on right now? Because there's no separation at all between you and what you have going on right now. No judgments, no self-consciousness, no punishments, and no rewards, just complete dedication to what you have going on right now. I'll quote someone named Saigo Takamori, who was a reluctant leader of the Satsuma Rebellion and whose crushing and humiliating defeat turned him into a national hero in Japan. If I can find his quote. Yeah. What is achieved by depending on one's own ability is so uncertain that we cannot regard it with any satisfaction. Only sincerity can accomplish an enterprise. What is achieved by depending on one's own ability is so uncertain that we cannot regard it with any satisfaction. Only sincerity can accomplish an enterprise. When we become intimate with our lives, with this life, this one life is immediately actualized. Does that matter? I leave you to be the judge. I'll close with a verse written by Wuman. One instant of full attention fills immensity. Endless time exists right now. If you focus on this moment of attention, you can see the person who is seeing. Thank you.